the guy for that. But to your point, because it's a smaller group and we have quite a bit to cover, there are usually other areas that y'all support. So I still do support our sales organization in terms of looking at their contracts and negotiating transactions for them. I still do support marketing, and I still do support our IT organization. But that's probably, combined, that's probably 50%. The other 50% is all employment and labor.
As a follow-up, oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
So about how many people work in-house at Clorox, or do they go
Right
on
now,
positions?
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Can you repeat the question, because I think people can't hear.
Oh, go ahead.
So just to repeat the question real quick is, at Clorox, how many in-house counsel do they have, or does it depend on which departments you're in, and roughly estimate?
Right now, we have probably about 25 in-house attorneys, and over in Oakland, it's probably about 20 of us, and then we have another 5 or so down in our Buenos Aires office in Argentina. And so it just, you know, we're broken up into practice areas, and so we have like a corporate governance group, we have an international group, and then we have kind of like an IP patents group. And so I'm part of kind of the corporate governance group, but that's a very big group. I mean, employment and labor is one piece of that, but it's also securities, it's also compliance with Foreign Corrupt Trade Practices Act. It's all of that.
So just to clarify, is that the headquarters, or just that division, or just this?
Well, it's the headquarters is over in Oakland, and that's where where our legal team is, and then we're divided into kind of right now into 3 practice areas, and which are corporate governance, IP, and then we have our international group, international/advertising group. And so you'll have in each one of those areas, you'll have 7, 8 lawyers assigned to each one of those areas, ranging from corporate counsel, senior corporate counsel, all the way up to associate general counsel, and then all of us together report into our general counsel. So general counsel is kind of the head. She's got 3 generals, and then the generals have a bunch of soldiers. That's kind of the way to think of it.
Okay, I think we'll move on, and there'll be time, hopefully be time for more questions at the end. So let's turn it over to Devin, who's going to explain all the acronyms to us.
All the acronyms. Hi, I'm Devin. I went to school here. I graduated in 2007, so I've been in the workplace not too many years. I went to law school with the intention of doing something in employment law, primarily on the employee side, and so I actually chose GGU because of the work clinic. I worked there, I think, as many semesters as I was allowed to, and left law school with the same intention to do something in employment law. I graduated, had some trouble looking for work, as I'm sure you're all aware of, and so I sort of created my own job with a nonprofit in Oakland, where I talked with their I forget what it's called with the CEO, but it's a nonprofit. ED. Talked to the ED, and her HR manager needed some assistance, so I sort of went in-house in a way, and then I worked with them to help them go over their policies. I helped them look at their procedures, look at their handbook, helped with some internal investigations, and kind of just created my own job by making myself necessary, because she had very little help. So I did that for about 6 to 8 months until she sadly said that they really could not justify continuing to pay me, because it's a very small nonprofit and there was very little money, and they did what they could, but they had to let me go. And so I found a job at a very small firm in Oakland doing civil rights employment work. I was there for a while. I enjoyed the work, but I found myself more inclined towards the investigative side and not as excited about the litigation part of it. And after a few months, it was clear that it was not the right workplace, that I wasn't feeling like I was getting the right training or the right experience, and I wasn't very happy there. And so I again created my own job, where I did a couple of informational interviews, and I found someone who had a friend who was a solo practitioner. She had no one else in the office. She represented federal employees, and so it was employee side employment law. She had a trial come up, and she had no help whatsoever. So I volunteered my time to work with her on the trial for the experience, and after 2 weeks of that, I made myself again completely indispensable, and so she was convinced that she should pay me to work with her. So I started working with her for a few months, until again we got to the point where she said she just couldn't afford me any longer. And that's when I found this job, which actually was posted on the GGU website. So I then switched here about a little over 2 years ago. I started as a benefit advisor, and that means that I work with the public. I work on both sides. I talk to employers, plan administrators, and employees. I'm not representing any side, I'm just there to advise and educate. So EBSA stands for Employee Benefit Security Administration, and we deal with benefits, private employer-based benefits. So anything to do with healthcare and anything to do with pensions is under our jurisdiction. COBRA and HIPAA are laws that have to do with healthcare. I find them fascinating. Not everyone agrees, but it's a very fun job because their benefits are very vital. Much like employment, jobs are vital, benefits are vital, healthcare is vital, and so it's a very exciting field to be working in, to be focused just on the benefits side, to talk to people about what their benefits are, make sure they're getting the benefits that they've been promised. As a benefit advisor, I will work with plan administrators, I'll work with employees, and I make sure that plan documents are being upheld. So one example of what we deal with a lot is pension money that's not being dealt with correctly, shall we say. So there's a lot of fiduciary violations that we look into. So when you're working for a company and they take money on your paycheck for your 401k, let's say they take $50 out a pay period, they're supposed to then put it into your 401k within a certain amount of time. Sometimes employers don't do that, and that's a problem. So what we do is we talk to the employer. We try to be friendly, we try to do it informally, we explain the situation, we say what's going on with money, let me look at the records, let me see what's happened. We review the records with them, and if we see that there is a fiduciary violation, then we move on to a number of steps depending on how willing they are to work with us. At the end of the day, ideally we get the money put into the bank, into the 401k, and then everyone's happy. It's not a punitive law. There's some penalties, but there's not going to be any large lump sums of pain and suffering involved, unfortunately, which is hard because the public will call and they'll demand large sums of money because they've been wronged, and all we can do is make them whole again and make it right. We can't grant them large millions of dollars in lawsuits. But what I can do is make sure people get the benefits they've been promised. And so that's something that I find very satisfying, to be able to assist people making things right, ideally before it gets to the litigation. I work with plan administrators. Sometimes they'll call us and they'll say, I don't know what happened. There's a problem, can you help me with this? And we're more than willing to work with people, again, informally, help them solve the problem. We are not out to attack anyone, we're not out to get anyone in trouble, we're there to assist. I've just moved over to be an investigator, which is taking the complaints sort of a little bit further. So what I do now is I go on site, I go through records, I investigate the problem. We work with U.S. attorneys to help them build up their cases. So I found this was for me, a very perfect job, because it allows me to do the investigative work that I find very interesting. It allows me to get my hands in it, really work with the facts, work with the data, review information, really see what's happening. We've got, I know what the law is, I know what the elements are. I can help prove that, and then I can give that to the attorney to then take to the next steps that I personally am not as excited about. So I found that working with the government and working in this area is a really good fit for me. It's not for everyone, but I really enjoy it. I really enjoy my coworkers. I find that working for the government is, in terms of work-life balance, a really good match for me. It's important to me to maintain my life outside of law school, outside of my job. I took 5 years to go to law school because I had other things I wanted to do. Throughout law school, I had other things I wanted to do, and so for me, it's been really important to have a job that it really is 9 to 5. If I stay late, I get credit hours. It's nice if that's the type of job that you're looking for, if you want to have a really vibrant life outside of your work. And we found out today we have a paid internship. So there's some information up here if you're interested. It's in our agency. It's doing the work that I used to do. I understand that they need at least 3 days a week paid internship. So if you're interested and you want to come down and pick that up or talk to me afterwards, I'd be happy to tell you more about the position. But that's my agency that I'm in. There's a lot of agencies within the Department of Labor. This is the one that I've worked with. But I have had a very good time with it. Are there any questions? Yes.
How will healthcare reform change your job, if at all?
Well, the main way it's changed my job is it's made it very difficult because we don't know what the law says yet, but the public knows the law exists. So there's the Affordable Care Act. We call it ACA, even though I think we've been told not to call it that because they don't like the way it sounds. People like to call it Obama's Health Care Act. It's the Affordable Care Act. It's made a lot of amazing changes. Or is going to make a lot of amazing changes. I think it's, in my personal opinion, not speak for the government, I think it's fantastic. I think it's it's going to do a lot to really help a lot of people. The problem is that when the law happens, they write it and then they wait a while before they tell us what it actually means. So we know the law exists and people have heard the law exists, so they call me and they want to know exactly what's going to happen. And there's some changes that aren't going to be implemented for another 3 years, but they want it to happen now, and then we get into strange arguments over the phone that become a little surreal after a while when I say, there's nothing more I can say, but you're very angry, I understand, I'm sorry. So it's made it interesting in that it's showing me a lot of how laws get passed and how laws get written and how they get regulated and interpreted. So in a way, it's very interesting to see that. But right now, the main way it's going to change my job in the future is not by very much. It's just going to be another law that we'll have to enforce. And right now what we're doing is we're in that weird in-between phase where we're waiting for regulations to get passed down to us. So the law has tons of different parts to it, and they individually will give us part by part by part. So one of the things that the law is taking care of is the issue of pre-existing conditions. For children, you can no longer exclude coverage for pre-existing conditions on a group health plan. For adults, it's not until 2013. So we're in kind of a middle ground now where kids don't have pre-existing conditions anymore, but adults do. And so it's interesting from a completely objective standpoint to see how that plays out. It's difficult for a lot of people to understand. It's still difficult when I deal with the public to hear people call and tell me some horrible stories about the need for health care, and in some situations there's nothing that I can do. All that we can do is enforce the law. We can't make interpretations. We can't go beyond what their plan documents say. So a lot of times people will come and they have a health plan that says we cover these 5 things, and they think, well, that should mean my issue. But unless it's specifically in that document, I can't enforce it. All I can do is say, well, the document says this. I can't interpret that language, only a judge can. So frequently what I have to end up doing is tell people that they need to talk with an attorney about, not me, about going forward with a lawsuit, because a judge can interpret the contract. They can look and say, well, I think this word covers this situation. But all we can do is say, their words say these 5 issues. That's all that we can do. So did I answer your question? I think I veered off a little bit, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, to add on to that though, for me, healthcare reform has made my job very, very busy and very, very interesting, because when you're in-house now, our HR team is clamoring to understand what it means, and they don't like when we have to tell them we don't know yet, we're still waiting, and it doesn't happen via phone call. I mean, they're knocking on my door and they're in my office, so. But we've also had to look at all of our plans and make some decisions, because there's issues around whether or not certain plans are still grandfathered, so they don't have to comply with certain things, or some have lost their grandfather status, so now they do have to comply with some additional things. And what does that mean? How much is it going to cost? So my summer was very, very busy in terms of trying to deal with healthcare reform, and so it's just contrasting it with the very.
Call us with your questions.
Oh, I will now.
We do get calls from attorneys frequently that are in-house people that are asking the same thing. What does this mean? And I have to say, national office hasn't told me what it means yet, so I don't know.
But there are some good things, even just increasing the age limit to 26, just little things like that, really good. So.
Okay, before we move on to our litigators, I just want to make one announcement that fits right in with the litigation, which is another program that's on Thursday, September 8th this week from noon to 1. It's going to be in room 3201, which is the Summer Trial Advocacy Fellowship Panel. Like Devin, we keep you apprised of opportunities. There'll be attorneys from the San Francisco Trial Lawyers Association visiting to talk about plaintiff side litigation, not specifically to labor and employment, but in all areas. And the organization has a paid diversity fellowship for current 2Ls that they will be talking about. The summer fellows allow selected students to rotate among 3 firms.